Once upon a time, there was a boy named Jack who lived with his mother. They were very poor, and in the end, the only thing they had left to make money from was their one and only cow. So his mother said to Jack, "It's really hard, but we've had to give up the cow. Take it to the market and sell it for a good price." Jack set off, pulling the cow. After walking for a while, the butcher came up to him. And he called out, "Hey, where are you going with this cow?" "I'm going to sell it," Jack replied. And the butcher said, and as he was holding it in one hand, he heard a noise from his hat, and when he looked inside, he saw a strange-shaped bean, and Jack wanted it. "Boy, you want this, don't you?" "No, no, these are strange, magical beans. I can't give them to you for free. How about we swap them for the cow?" Jack swapped the cow for the bag of beans and ran home with the bag of beans. "Mother, today was a real success," he said, telling the story of swapping the cow for the beans. When his mother heard it, "Oh, I'm so shocked. He lost a precious cow for these worthless peas. What shall we do with this foolish boy?" The mother was furious, threw the beans out the window, and began to cry pitifully. Jack also felt sad and went to sleep, still hungry. The next morning, Jack woke up and happened to look out the window. He saw that the bean seed he had thrown into the garden the day before had sprouted, and overnight, a thick, sturdy-looking beanstalk had grown tall enough to make him look up. The beanstalk had grown all the way up into the sky. "I wonder how far I can go if I climb up that." Jack immediately climbed the beanstalk, and even after he had gone over the clouds, the beanstalk still continued, and finally, Jack reached the top. There he found a big castle. He knocked on the gate, and the ogre's wife came out. When she noticed Jack, she said, "Where did you come from? This is the home of the man-eating ogre. And if he finds you, he'll eat you right away instead of dinner." At that moment, they heard footsteps so loud they shook the ground. It was the master of the house, the man-eating ogre, returning from outside. The ogre's master said, "There's no other way. Come over here." And in a panic, he hid Jack in the hearth. When the ogre entered the room, he shouted, "Humph, humph, humph. I smell children. Whether alive or dead, I'll grind them all up with their bones and make bread." The master replied, "No, that's the smell of the people you caught," and put in the clay pot. But the big ogre was still looking around and sniffing. But he just couldn't find Jack. Finally, the ogre gave up, sat down on a chair, and began to eat and drink greedily. After he had eaten and drunk to his heart's content, he ordered the servant, "Hey, bring me a chicken." It was a strange chicken, and he put it on the table, and said, "Eat," and it immediately laid a golden egg. The ogre said, "Eat," and it laid another golden egg. "Wow, what a special chicken. My mother will be so happy if I take it home," thought Jack. The ogre was amused, and laid more and more golden eggs one after another. But he seemed to get full and sleepy, and fell asleep, snoring loudly. When Jack saw that the ogre was fast asleep, he quietly slipped out of the hearth, picked up the chicken that was on the table, and ran out of the castle. Then he ran on, and when he reached the ladder of the beanstalk, he slipped down and returned home. Jack's mother was very happy that her son had returned safe and sound. From then on, thanks to the chicken that laid golden eggs that Jack had brought back, the father became rich and happy. After a while, Jack wanted to go back to the castle again. So he slipped up the ladder of the beanstalk again. When he arrived at the ogre's castle and hid in an iron box this time, the giant returned and sniffed around again, but he couldn't find Jack. After the big man had finished his dinner, he had the bag full of gold and silver treasures brought out. He opened it on the table and played with it, counting the pieces one by one. But then he put them back in the bag and tied the string tightly. Then he gave a big yawn, then fell asleep, snoring loudly. So Jack slowly picked up the bag, full of gold and silver treasures, tightly in both arms and ran away. However, there was a puppy guarding the bag, and it started barking loudly. Jack thought he was going to fail. But the big man was fast asleep and would not wake up. Jack ran furiously, and finally reached the ladder of the beanstalk. He nearly dropped the heavy bag of gold and silver many times. But he held on and climbed down the ladder of the beanstalk. When Jack got home, his mother was overjoyed to see him back. And even more so when she heard that he had made a lot of money. Jack stayed quietly at home for a while. But he wanted to go to the castle again, so he quietly climbed the ladder of the beanstalk. As soon as he arrived at the castle, the giant returned. So he hurriedly hid in the pot this time. Then, after the giant had finished his dinner, he said to the servant, "They have taken my chickens, and stolen my bags of gold and silver. Oh well, I guess I'll play the harp tonight." When Jack quietly opened the lid of the pot and looked inside, he saw a beautiful harp decorated with beads. The giant placed the harp on the table and said, "Play," and the harp began to play by itself. What's more, the sound was so beautiful that Jack wanted the harp more than the chicken with the golden lights, or the bag full of gold and silver. Soon, the ogre fell asleep, lulled by the music of the harp. So Jack quietly slipped out of the pot and ran away with the harp in his hands. However, the harp was bewitched and began to yell loudly, "Wake up, sir! Wake up, sir!" The giant woke up and stood up when he noticed a little boy running away with the big harp in his hands. "Wait, little boy, you've stolen the chicken, the bag of gold and the bag of silver. And now you're going to steal the harp too?" the giant yelled, chasing after him. "Go ahead and catch me if you can," Jack roared, not giving up, but still trying his best. Jack picked up the harp and started to climb down the beanstalk ladder, and far below him, his mother was gazing at the sky with tearful eyes. Meanwhile, the giant caught up with him and was just one step away from him. "Mother, bring me the axe. Hurry, hurry," Jack cried out from above with all his might. The giant was climbing up the ladder, creaking and creaking, and Jack jumped down from the high top. At that moment, his mother ran over with her axe. So Jack swung it and cut the beanstalk right off at the base of the ladder. The beanstalk was severed, and the giant, who was still halfway up the ladder, fell from high in the sky and disappeared somewhere. And Jack and his mother lived happily ever after.